In 2023, Riot announced they would stop producing a color story for each new champion, and this was sad news since the lore of League would move forward primarily through these color stories. So when Riot released their newest and smallest champ, many people thought his bio was all the story we'd get. Oh, would you look at that though? A book about the Ruination, Camivore, and the Imperial Dragons. Hello everyone, I'm Rum, and welcome to today's video, reviewing the story and character of Smolder, the Fiery Fledgling. Before we go further, I want to shout out the video's comment of the day from Dimitri, who said they got back into League after watching my video and asked why I didn't place ranked with Smolder. Thanks for the comment, and I did respond with a reply, but I'll say it again here for the gameplay video. I couldn't get into a match with Smolder that wasn't quick play. Even now I struggle to get him since he's either stolen or banned from me. That said, let's also welcome the public members of the crew this week. Cheers to you guys, and now let's get into the video. It comes as a surprise that the story of Smolder, and therefore the Imperial Dragons, got an extension beyond Smolder's bio since Riot announced that they won't be doing color stories for every character because, for the most part, most people don't like to read them. Admittedly though, the videos that led up to Smolder had revealed a lot for the world of League, and more specifically Camivore. And we'll get more into that with Smolder's story begins where all Imperial Dragons begin, in Camivore. In League, there are many dragons, each with different designs, elements, and overall aesthetic based on where they're from or what element they possess. Besides our dragon champions, the most apparent dragons in League are the Elementals, which all look the same besides a few color changes, the Chemtech and Hextech dragons, which are the most recent dragons added to the game, and lastly, the powerful Elder dragons. But in the world of Runeterra, there are more dragons with different appearances, elements, and body types. For example, in Bilgewater, the region primarily full of pirates and the sea, the dragons look more like serpents. In Noxus, the dragons are hardened by battle to reflect the gruesome and brutal life that resides there. Then you have the Celestials, which reflect space and stars. The most apparent dragon to use to describe the Celestials would be Aurelian Soul, who forges stars. The list goes on for every single region, including Bramble City. So that leaves the newest addition to the lore, Imperial Dragons. Hailing from Camivore, they are treated as royalty, being showered in gold and relics. In exchange, the humans that gave these dragons gifts would receive their protection and accompany the families when traveling, as well as conquering, meaning those with dragons also became royalty. We see these family members in the game with Viego and technically Vladimir, who is Viego's great nephew. These types of dragons are what Smolder is, but as the Ruination grows, food becomes scarce and Camivore becomes nearly inhabitable. Shortly after his hatching, Smolder's mother had to hunt farther and farther lands, leading to her arrival on Noxus. Dragons aren't new to Noxus, but the price of their hatchlings was very high. So when rumors were spread of a mother dragon from a faraway land and a hatchling she was protecting on a mountaintop, it didn't take long for Noxian thieves to begin their journey to steal Smolder from the nest. However, shortly after stealing Smolder, his mother returned and hunted down the thieves who reached a trade dock, hiding Smolder on their boat. Full of anger, his mother chased them down and burnt the dock down, killing many who were there and injuring those who were lucky enough to be alive. Unfortunately, in the chaos, Smolder was swept away and crashed into an island far from his mother, who cried for his return. Now alone, cold, and afraid, Smolder roamed and had been hunting as his mother taught him if such a case were to happen. On one of these hunting trips, he found the human child Marinos, who named him Smolder. Marinos taught Smolder how to speak, and over time, their friendship began to grow, but it was kept a secret to protect Smolder. A long time had passed, and Marinos grew older and even had a child of his own, so he could no longer spend much time with Smolder. In boredom, Smolder darted into a forest and began to teach himself how to breathe fire as his mother and the dragons Marinos told in stories did. After many attempts, Smolder released a hot breath of flame. In his excitement, however, he didn't realize the forest had begun burning down. Clouds of smoke filled the sky, and a loud roar was heard throughout the lands. His mother had swooped down as she never gave up searching for her little hatchling. She was impressed that he learned to breathe fire all by himself and decided after reaching a mountaintop to teach Smolder how to be and what it meant to be a dragon. For one day, they would return to Camavor to usher in a new age of dragons. And that's where Smolder's story ends. His current whereabouts aren't exact, but we can assume from the map and general notes that Smolder and his mother are most likely around the areas of Drakengate or the Blood Cliffs. This could be wrong, but with the boats, cliffs, and trade ports mentioned in the story, I don't think my guess would be too far off from the general region. So Smolder's story isn't much in regards to pushing the world of Runeterra forward, but his connections and how it explains Camavor, the royal families, and the dragons does push the world of Runeterra just a bit further than where it was at last. But his story is only one part of his whole character. Now let's talk about for the design of Smolder, not just Imperial dragons, the devs wanted a cute yet ferocious little beast that would walk around the rift. His initial designs show they wanted a dragon a bit later in the development cycle, when they began to piece together that a dragon was a perfect fit for an EDC rather than something like a cat or something like it. It was a better fit and took much less to explain how an animal could shoot anything without a gun. Also, adding a weapon to something cute tends to ruin the overall cute aspect of it. Not always, but for the most part, it does. However, the devs were making a new type of dragon that was essentially a fossil in the Runeterra world, so they looked to Legends of Runeterra, Riot's other game in the League universe, for inspiration. More specifically, the Camavoran dragons from the Shadow Isles, since they were essentially ruined Imperials. Oddly enough, they are still very different in appearance. There are a few core aspects that remain compared to Smolder's mother. We have a long, sleek body, a cobra-shaped head, and gazelle-like horns remained. But body shape-wise, we can tell they decided to split away from the LOR version, because while in LOR the Camavoran dragons stick to being snake-like all around, the Imperials are closer to big cats. Smolder's mother has an almost jaguar-like appearance. Her protruding chest, the way her claws resemble paws, her elbows arching out like a big cat on a hunt, her sharp and predator-like eyes, and her face being somewhat widened and more angular compared to some of the dragons we have in League now. Smolder also has cat aspects in his animations, having his Q animation where he arches his back like a cat in fear, his auto attack animation having him raise a paw while looking at his prey, and his walking animation both acting like a boy with a cape and a kitten proudly stomping along. It almost feels like Riot made their cake and ate it too, since Smolder acts like a cat dragon. Personality-wise, however, Smolder does feel like a child prince. He is told the stories of his breed and is learning how his powers work, yet he still feels the need to point out how powerful and important to the place he can barely pronounce he is. He is self-centered. It's apparent in his story the only reason he wanted to get more powerful was because he was left alone. It happens not once, but twice in his story, with him being separated from his mother in desperation, and when Marinos was too old to play with him anymore and needed to focus on his child. In-game, he doesn't fear characters, spouting taunts and jokes at them. And just like a real child, he will always bring up how stronger and better his parents are compared to yours. But not everything comes without faults, and I can't discuss his design much more without mentioning his... In my gameplay video of Smolder, I mentioned that he quickly became one of Riot's most controversial champions on his release. I didn't explain why then, because I wanted to bring it up in this video. A better look into Smolder as a character in a story rather than a champion in a game. So why was he so controversial? Well, part of it is from Riot's marketing. See, Riot likes to show hints to their champions long before their announcement. For example, Set had given players invitations in-game for amazing performances. Hui, the character before Smolder, had splashes of paint around the map and in Riot's posts. Melio, the fire support champ, had his little fire buddies in the map along with artwork of them in Riot's posts. For Smolder, they kept mentioning a little baby champ running around the rift. It became a fiery baby champ on the rift. Then the reveal of his egg was shown, with Riot saying how adorable the little hatchling is. And lastly, his face after a story of how the Imperial Dragons of Camavor came to be. And that's where the fire began. Smolder wasn't this cute little baby that Riot was hyping up to be, but this gross, uncanny valley spawn. His eyes were human and his nose was barely visible. Both of these things paired together with the color of his face seeming almost like skin and his scales barely covering anything led to many saying that he shouldn't have been announced yet and that his design was Disney-esque, didn't fit the art style for League, and needed to be changed. It didn't take long for Riot to realize that players weren't liking their cute and small baby champ. So what did they do? They'd announced they'd take a look, which was keyword for we messed up and don't want to lose a lot of money yet. So a few days after the announcement went out, they made another announcement for texture changes since it was far too late for a model change for Smolder. They had to do the closest thing to change his model. And to give Riot credit, his change was good and received much more positivity. However, there were a lot of people who still thought his design was off-putting and created their own takes on the champ. One thing that many people mentioned was that his face still felt human. This was due to his snout not being extended but flat against his face. So why they chose that style is still unexplained, but my leading theory, a game theory if you will, is that Riot attempted to capture a kin side profile in trying to stick to the overall cat theme of the dragon. And that leaves us with where Smolder is today. Something I feel bad for Smolder is that his new appearance didn't make it into PBE. So you had a lot of creators join the PBE, seeing his design and being upset because it didn't change enough. Not realizing that was the old Smolder. They were just complaining about it more. Unfortunately, that still left many players with bad feelings about him and not wanting to pick him up based on his design alone. Which is a shame because I think the redesign really nailed it. I still feel a few uncanny moments in animations, mainly his recall, but he does feel like a cat mixed with a dragon. Overall though, his controversy was blown out of proportion. While it did make Riot respond faster, I think his redesign was done exceptionally well. And the hate he's receiving for it just doesn't feel right with me. After all, he is a group of people's work, and they did really well adding him into the world of Runeterra. But to wrap everything up, Smolder's story was good. The story around him was even better. His character design came out well, and his personality matched his age and position of power. There was a lot, and this is my longest script, so to make things easier for me, my name is Rum, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.